Location: apartment in Osaka, Japan. Time: June 2025. Kenji was a specialist in digitizing museum exhibits in Kyoto. He loved his job, especially when it took him to the most unusual corners of Japanese culture. When Manenji Temple, home to the famous Okiku doll, the one with the legendary hair that grows, needed to create a high-precision 3D model of it for a virtual tour, Kenji enthusiastically took on the task. His task was simple: spend a week photographing the doll in an isolated room in the temple using laser scanners and photogrammetry. The first 3 days passed quietly. The Okiku doll was small, dressed in a kimono, with a traditional okappa haircut. Her hair, which should have reached her knees, was cut short as usual, but remained abnormally long for a doll. On the 4th day, Kenji ran a high-resolution scan. As he processed the data on his laptop, he noticed an anomaly. In some of the early images taken just a few hours earlier, the doll's hair appeared shorter than in the later ones. He attributed this to a scanner error. On the 5th day, when Kenji was working alone, he felt that the room was too quiet. Even the noise from the street seemed to not reach here. At that moment, his work tablet, which was lying next to the doll, suddenly activated voice recording. In the recording, which he listened to later, only a light, thin laugh could be heard, a sound too high-pitched to belong to an adult. After completing his work, Kenji returned to Osaka and began the final modeling. He uploaded all 2,000 images of Okiku and the 3-dimensional point cloud to a powerful graphics server. This is where strange things began to happen. The graphics server, which had never malfunctioned before, began to overheat and produce errors. During the modeling process, as Okiku took on a digital form, her facial expression on the screen seemed to change. Sometimes her mouth was slightly open, as if she were whispering, even though it was closed in the original photographs. One evening, when Kenji was working late, his laptop, which was displaying a 3D model of Okiku, suddenly shut down, and when he restarted it, he found that all his personal photos and work files had been moved to a new folder labeled with just 2 letters, OK. Kenji felt panic rising. He was certain he hadn't made that folder. This wasn't just file transfer, it was digital intrusion. As he dragged the last folder into the trash, his smartphone, which was lying on the table, suddenly rang. The call was from an unknown number, and instead of a name, the screen displayed only an image of Okiku's face, cut from his own 3D model. Kenji rejected the call. A second later, a message arrived on his phone. It was a photo. It showed his own desk. On the desk lay his wallet, his keys, and a single long black hair. The message read, "You took me in. Now you have to cut my hair." Kenji turned pale. He looked around his apartment. Everything was locked. He grabbed his things and rushed to the door. When he stepped outside, he turned to look at his window. The apartment was on the 10th floor. In the dim light, he could clearly make out a small, static figure looking down from the window. But that's not the worst part. Since that night, every time Kenji turns on his laptop to work on graphics, his mouse cursor, which he calls Okiku, starts moving on its own to the same file, the audio recording from the temple that has that same faint laugh. Kenji never worked with 3D modeling again, but he can't change his phone, and no one knows how to delete the OK file from his system. Some people say that now the Okiku doll doesn't just live in the temple, but has settled in the digital network, and Kenji is just one of its many guardians. And every time someone downloads this 3D model, they invite her into their world.